What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Ally 400 Top 5 DFS Picks video for Sunday, June 26th at Nashville Superspeedway, the second time the Cup Series will be racing here. And as always, I am your host, Chris Pennell. You can find me on Twitter at ChrisPennell16, and this video is presented by PrizePicks. In today's video, we are going over general track strategy, how to approach this slate from a DFS perspective, and my top 5 favorite plays on the slate. Please keep in mind this video is being recorded pre-practice and qualifying, so some of my thoughts and opinions on these drivers could end up changing throughout the weekend. So making sure you're staying up to date on what happens on track during Friday's session, Saturday, and Sunday will be very beneficial to you in creating fantasy NASCAR lineups this weekend. And if you want that up-to-date info analysis, you can find me and Jason on the Stokastic Live Before Lock show, breaking down the entire slate post-qualifying and practice and answering any questions you may end up having. And as far as how we should approach this slate from a DFS perspective, I'm definitely going to be relying on practice quite heavily this weekend, although there is rain in the forecast, so if we end up seeing a night race, we might have to throw that out just a little bit. But Nashville is kind of a tricky track because it's right in the middle of being a shorter track and an intermediate track. It's 1.3 miles in length, so similar to Darlington, but it's a concrete surface, and really we only have Dover and Bristol to look at as far as concrete is concerned. So it's going to be kind of harder to find some similar tracks this weekend. It is a flatter track, so I think looking at tracks like Richmond, Phoenix, and Gateway, which we just raced at, will be pretty beneficial to us. But I also want to throw in some intermediates that have a little bit of tire wear mixed in, because I think we're going to see that at Nashville this weekend, so Charlotte, Kansas. And if you want to throw in Darlington just because it's a similar size as far as 1.3 miles in length, that is something you can certainly do as well, though tire fall off is very extreme at Darlington, so that's something to keep in mind. But looking at drivers that perform pretty well at those similar tracks so far this season, and whoever's fast in practice over the course of this weekend will be something I am definitely looking at. And we have around 300 total laps, which means over 200 total dominator points available to us this weekend. So dominator points going to be pretty important this weekend. Last year, we saw Kyle Larson absolutely run away with it, dominated the race, and it was kind of like a one-dom build as far as the optimal lineup was concerned, but we haven't really seen that be the case so far this season. So I think we're going to have multiple dominators in our lineups, at least 2 to 3, and then build around it from there. So getting into the picks, we'll start with number 5. And at number 5, we have Ricky Stenhouse Jr., $7,100 on DraftKings and $7,000 over on FanDuel. I think he's going to be a nice cheap option in the mid-range, be able to balance out our lineups this weekend. I was kind of going back and forth if I wanted to even talk about Stenhouse because he has some really up and down finishes at the flatter tracks, which Nashville is a flatter track. He has really struggled at so far this season, had an awful race at Gateway and some other really poor finishes throughout the season, but he's also had some really good finishes at similar tracks as well. So it's kind of going to be hard to tell what we get from Stenhouse. I think practice will help us paint a better picture. If he has some speed in practice, I think we can definitely trust Stenhouse to have a really good race this weekend, maybe a top 15, top 10 finish. But practice is something I have to really look in for Stenhouse this weekend because it can go either way. But last year at Nashville, it's obviously only a one-race sample size, but he raced very well here at a 6th place finish, 6.3 running position, and the 3rd best driver rating in the field at 114.7. So if we can do that Nashville last year, I realize it's a different car and everything, but that does bode well for him this weekend since we don't have too much data for a track like Nashville. And moving on to number 4, we have Kurt Busch at $8,300 on DraftKings, $800 over on FanDuel. And I love this price point on Kurt Busch. He seems to be able to bode well at these higher tire wear tracks, which I'm not really expecting Nashville to have huge tire fallout, but it's certainly going to be an issue this weekend. And looking at some of the comparable tracks that we've had so far this year, I think this does set up to be a pretty decent week for Kurt Busch, as long as he can show some speed in practice. But at 60 DraftKings points last year at Nashville, finished in 8th place. And if you're looking at some of his numbers so far this season at similar tracks, he finished 3rd at Gateway just a couple weeks ago, 31st at Charlotte, but he won at Kansas, absolutely dominated that race. But then 28th, 31st, and 35th at Darlington, Dover, and Richmond, but we can kind of chalk those up to some bad luck. I think Kurt Busch has top 10 upside with legit top 5 upside here, so definitely want to be on Kurt Busch. I think the Toyotas can certainly carry some speed heading into the weekend. And for number 3, we have our first JGR car of the weekend. It's Christopher Bell at $9,100 on DraftKings and only $9,000 over on FanDuel. Had top 10 here last year at Nashville, but he's actually been the best finisher at similar tracks so far this season. It's a 7-race sample size, but no one has a better average finish at these tracks than Christopher Bell right now. 9th at Gateway, 5th at Charlotte, 5th at Kansas, 6th at Darlington, 4th at Dover, and 6th at Richmond. He's been a contender just about everywhere so far this season. He's been able to run very, very well. And the flatter tracks have always been his bread and butter. It's not really a short, flat track, but it's kind of under the same category. So I think we have to have interest in Christopher Bell this weekend, especially with how good he's been overall this year. So at $9,100, yes, the price is kind of up there. I'm hoping that keeps some people off of him, but I think he's going to be an excellent tournament target unless he happens to qualify poorly or on the pole. But outside of that, we should get some lower ownership on Christopher Bell, hopefully. So before we get into our next pick, I want to talk about our sponsor, Prize Picks. They offer a daily prop-based contest, and you can use promo code OSMO for a $100 first match deposit bonus. There is no sharks, optimizers, or mass entries. 5-player lineups can add to 10 times your entry fee. Use your knowledge of multiple sports with cross-sport entries. Download in the App Store, on Google Play, or over on prizepicks.com. You can use our free player prop tools to help you make the best selections. You can get 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up and make a deposit at Prize Picks. You'll receive your email within 24 to 48 hours after to redeem your free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. And coming in at number 2, we have to have him on here just about every single week with how good and strong he's been so far this season. But it's Ross Chastain, $10,500 on DraftKings, $12,500 over on FanDuel. But if we're looking at the similar tracks so far this year, he's got the second most dominator points, the second most DraftKings points price, only behind the guy we're going to talk about in a little bit, the best average running position. And if we're looking at his numbers overall this year, no one is averaging more DraftKings points per race than Ross Chastain. No one has a better average running position. He's tied for the most top fives, has some of the most dominator points. Hard to bet against him no matter what kind of track we're at, whether it's a short flat, an intermediate, a road course, a super speedway. He's been killing it each and every single week at all track types. And he also finished in second place last season, which the car was not nearly as good as it was this year. And obviously it's a whole different scenario now, but for him being able to run that well at Nashville last year, I think will bode well for him this weekend. So Ross Chastain, even though the price keeps rising, the same thing's going to happen to my exposure to him because he's just been so strong. We have to ignore the massive price point on him. I think he should be one of, if not the second most expensive driver each and every single weekend until further notice. So when he's not, I still think we're getting him at a little bit of a discount. And finally, getting into my number 1 DFS play for the Ally 400 at Nashville. It's going to be no other than Kyle Busch this weekend, $11,000 on DraftKings, $13,500 over on FanDuel. And he's just been absolutely killing it this season, as consistent as ever, actually averaging the most DraftKings points per race at similar tracks so far this season, and he's second most overall, only behind Ross Chastain, but it's only within around 1.5 points. But second at Gateway a couple weeks ago, second at Charlotte, third at Kansas, had an issue at Darlington where he finished 33rd, but 7th at Dover, 9th at Richmond. It's hard to bet against Kyle Busch right now. I currently think he's the best driver in the series. I know Kyle Larson's more expensive than him most weeks, but I do think that's a mistake. I realize Kyle Larson's just kind of getting juiced up from what he did last year, and obviously he crushed it at Nashville last season. But Kyle Busch has definitely been in the upper echelon so far this season. And like I said, his average finish-wise being very consistent at just not screwing up his races and being there till the end. Obviously had an issue last week at Sonoma where he spun out, but looking past that, he's been as solid as ever, and it's really hard to bet against Kyle Busch right now. I do think the Toyotas and JGR in general will carry some speed this weekend, plus his pit crew has been absolutely consistently fast so far this year, which is always going to help him get positions on pit road and get him to the lead as well. So loving Kyle Busch in all formats this weekend. Instead of recap, at number 5, we have rookie Stenhouse Jr., number 4, Kurt Busch, number 3, Christopher Bell, number 2, Ross Chastain, and number 1, Kyle Busch. And all these guys have either shown some speed or been very strong at similar tracks so far this year, or had some success last season at Nashville. And if you end up enjoying today's free content, just make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and feel free to leave a comment down below if you agree or disagree with any of the takes I had throughout today's videos. We love to hear your opinions over on Stokastic, as we like to build a strong community here. And you can also follow us on Sunday for the Live Before Lock show, where me and Jason will break down the entire slate, answer any questions you may end up having. But with that being said, I wish you all the best of luck, and I'm excited for the second race at Nashville.